Drop it.
Hi there, you're watching Miguel and this is Tito Talks, and today we're gonna talk about the 10 things you did not know about your CTPL, also known as your Compulsory Third-Party Liability. Take note, not complimentary po, no? This is mandated by the government. One interesting thing about your CTPL po, especially for all of you who already own vehicles po, is that it's already a mandated benefit na kailangan po nakukuha po natin every time we renew our vehicle's registration po. So at the same time that you renew your vehicle's registration, you're also covered for the full year as well, in contrast with your first CTPL na 3 years po ang coverage. Now, because the government mandates it at kailangan binibili po siya, most people buy it purely for the sake of buying it and not because they really need it. This ends up with a lot of uninformed drivers on the road who don't know what their policies are capable of at nalalaman lang po nila by the time na they're already in deep trouble. May nasaktan na po sila, may nabangga na po sila, and they do not know how to operate. They do not know what they're capable of doing. And this video for today is supposed to let you know what sorts of benefits or what sorts of interesting things your CTPL can do for you that you probably didn't know about. And let's start with number 1. Number 1 is known as the fact that CTPL is a per accident type of policy. Now, what do we mean when we say per accident type of policy? This simply means that every accident within the year is covered. Wala po tayong limit for how many accidents you can get into for the full year, as long as the policy is already in effect and the premium has already been paid. Per accident po basis siya. And that leads us to point number 2. Although the policy is on a per accident basis, it is not a per victim basis po. Ano ho? This is only per accident. That means in one accident, all the third parties involved, all the third parties that have sustained bodily injury would have to share the 100,000 peso limit of the CTPL, for those of you that are not aware. So if in, let's say, in one particular accident po, nakadali po tayo ng 3, 4, 5, hindi po 500,000 ang magiging shell out or magiging limit ni CTPL. It will always stay constant at 100,000 pesos po, which will be shared by all of the third parties involved in the particular accident. And I think you know what that means. This means that hindi po sapat ang coverage na provided ng CTPL in certain cases, very grave cases for that matter. Now, nabanggit na po natin yung 100,000 pesos na limit, no? And that will lead us to point number 3. And that point number 3 is that the 100,000 pesos po, it's not given out as a check as for every accident. No, we don't write checks like that. Our insurance companies don't write out checks the moment that they know na may accident po. It follows something known as a schedule. A schedule, in other words, a budget po. A designated amount of expenditures na dapat pinupuntahan po ng 100,000. To be more specific, this 100,000 peso benefit per accident has certain allocations po. There's an allocation for the hospital expense, doctor's fees, medical bills, pharmaceutical bills, and there's even a designated budget which is nakalaan po for monetary indemnity dun po sa nadisgrasya, depending on the level of severity of the damage sustained by the third party. Naputulan ba ng kamay, hanggang sa siko, hanggang sa balikat, nabulag lang ba sa isang mata, 2, nabingi po ba sa 2 tenga, naputol ba ang paa hanggang sa hita? All of these things, surprisingly, are all indicated on your CTPL, and this section is known as the Schedule of Indemnities. And you may want to take a look at that. It's a little bit funny looking po kasi pinepresyuhan po yung bawat bahagi po ng katawan natin. But nonetheless, it's very important, and it dictates the limits of what the policy can and cannot do for you. Having said that the 100,000 follows a Schedule of Indemnity, the next thing I want you guys to take note of is that on top of the Schedule of Indemnity, it also has a no-fault indemnity section. Now, what do we mean when we say no-fault indemnity? One of the first and most striking things about CTPL is the fact that it will only respond if it is your fault. Hence the term liability. The accident, the damages, the bodily damages to the third party are your liability. And under the law, if it is your liability, kayo po ang gagastos sa pagpapagamot and other related expenses po to the accident. With that being said, there is a certain section or there is a certain portion of your CTPL that allows you to claim maski hindi mo kasalanan. And that's really, really surprising. Ano po? And you may be thinking that may sound really simple on paper. However, you may be asking the question, why would I need to file a claim if it's not my fault? Why would I need to spend anything if it's not my fault? And this is where the complexities of certain accidents can come in, especially if it's not just you that's the motorist that's involved. It's also very, very useful when there are several motorists involved in a particular collision. Ano po? Suppose you are in a collision or your client is in a collision po with another vehicle at may nadamay pong third party. Now, technically speaking, unless the local authorities can determine kung sino po ang may kasalanan, it's not yet sure kung sino po ang liable party. Ano po? You'd have to wait for the local authorities, Highway Patrol Group, the MMDA, or the police to determine kung sino po ang liable party. But at that same time, while you're waiting for the investigative party to arrive, there is a third party that is already injured and needs medical attention. Immediate medical attention. Ano po? So the question is, sino magdadala sa hospital? Usually, it's the liable party. But then again, you don't know who that is yet. Tama po? So you're stuck with a conundrum wherein may mamamatay na, someone's gonna die, and you're not sure who's the liable party. Under the benefit of this no-fault indemnity, otherwise known as Section 2 of your motor car policy, you can file a claim for any expenses that you've spent towards the initial medical care of this third party. Ambulance fees, ER fees, so on and so forth. So, pwede nyo munang gastusan. You can rush them to the hospital, no questions asked. You can have them taken care of. And once the bill comes along, even if it's not your fault, even if it's not your liability, your claim will still be indemnified up to 15,000 pesos. So up to 15,000 po ang limit ng no-fault indemnity na to, and you are allowed to claim that much whether or not it's your fault. No need to establish liability. No need to wait for the residing party or the investigative party to point fingers at someone. This gives you the confidence to help those that have been involved in vehicular accidents. Kasi nga po naman, kawawa naman po, no? And on the same end, kayo din po kawawa. Gumastos ka na nga, nagmagandang loob ka na nga lang, tapos hindi mo pa marireimburse kasi hindi mo naman pala kasalanan. So, Section 2, also known as no-fault indemnity, actually helps you and helps the third party involved. And this is something not a lot of people are aware of. And I do hope you walk away with more confidence on the road because of this new information. Next up, you've got number 5. All accidents for 1 year are covered. It's in connection with what we said earlier that CTPL covers you on a per accident basis. So pag sinabi po natin all accidents for the year are covered, as long as the policy is in place and the premium has been paid for and has been accepted, every single accident you'll encounter within the year will be covered on the per accident basis of up to 100,000 pesos po. Wala po tayong limit on that. Even in extreme cases po, and just for hypothetical discussions, you end up killing someone every year. No, not every year, every month. What if you end up killing someone every month? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, all the way to December. Buwan-buwan po may biktima. All of these victims or all of these incidents will be covered up to 100,000 pesos with respect to the Schedule of Indemnities indicated within the policy. And that means you can have as many accidents as you want as long as the accidents happen within the year. Kindly take note of that. However, given that doesn't give you authority to really run into everyone you want to on a yearly basis. Ano po? There are cases where your claims history is taken into consideration, especially during renewals, ladies and gentlemen. If in the event that you prove to be a huge loss, mas marami po yung i-claim mo kaysa sa ibinayad mo, and you end up hurting someone on a monthly basis, there's a large chance that you may not be renewed by the same insurer, and you would have to look for someone else for your CTPL, and that is a really, really big problem. Don't you think so? Now, after number 5, we've got number 6, and that says it doesn't cover the driver. And you may be surprised about this. What? It only covers the third parties, and third parties only? Yes. CTPL only covers the third parties involved in accidents. Everyone inside the vehicle, driver included, are not covered under the benefit at all, which is actually very, very strange, but very, very true. Nonetheless, CTPL was not created with the driver in mind. It was created with the public in mind. As you'll find out, the policy and the company still becomes liable for any damages just to the third parties and not to the people riding the vehicle. Which brings us to point number 7, which says that it responds even if you're not the driver. Now, so to speak, every policy has an insured, a designated customer, yung may-ari po ng sasakyan at yung may-ari po ng policy. And it's the person with whom the insurance company is associated with, who is in a deal with the insurance company. Now, what if your car is involved in an accident and you're not the driver? What if, let's say, your wife borrowed your car, your child, your son, your daughter borrowed your car, or a friend borrowed your car, and they were the ones involved in an accident? Would it be their CTPL that comes into play, or would it still be your CTPL that comes into play? Which is a very interesting question, don't you think? Now, as number 7 has mentioned, it responds even if you're not the driver. However, you got to meet certain conditions po, known as the Authorized Driver Clause. Now, what does it take to become an authorized driver? You just have to fulfill 2 conditions, actually. You just have to ask permission from the government and from the owner. So when you ask permission from the owner, our claims team asks the owner of the vehicle. Pag nag-iimbestiga na po tayo ng claims, ano po? And when we ask the owner of the vehicle, we confirm if they are aware that the vehicle has been used by someone else. Ma'am, sir, alam niyo po ba, yung asawa ninyo, ginamit yung sasakyan. And we have to wait for the customers or the assured's confirmation that they are aware and they did give their permission. I also mentioned number 2, which you have to ask permission from the government. Ano po? How do I ask permission from the government? It's really, really simple. You just have to apply for a license, because your license is proof that the government gives you permission to drive Philippine vehicles on Philippine road. So, kailangan po lisensyado po tayo when we use someone else's vehicle, naturally. And don't forget, your license needs to have the proper restriction code based on the type of vehicle in question. We'll have a different video on your restriction code soon enough. I hope you watch it when it comes out. Now, next off, we're almost done. Number 8. It's a reimbursement type benefit. Ang CTPL po natin ay reimbursement type. We don't write out checks beforehand bago po lumabas ang hospital bills. No, the hospital bills, medical bills, doctor's fees, they already have to be paid for before we can actually reimburse, or before the insurance company can actually reimburse you for the expenses that you've already incurred. That means someone has to pick up the bill first, and most of the time that's going to be you or your client, who is the liable party for the third-party injury po. Kindly take note of that. This is how we are able to control expenses pagdating control losses pagdating po sa claims. We have to find proof. We have to see proof of the expenditures and subject these proof of expenditures to the Schedule of Indemnity, wherein limited pa rin po ang ating CTPL. And that's number 8. Next off is really, really interesting. It's number 9, and we're almost done with our list. Number 9 says it still pays for you even if you're drunk or you were caught driving under the influence of alcohol. And this question has been raised a couple of times by a lot of customers already. Am I still covered if I run over someone and I'm under the influence of alcohol? Lasing po ako nung nagdadrive ako, nung nakapatay po ako. And this actually scares a lot of people and causes a lot of them not to declare na sila po ay nakainom during the accident, kasi po baka po lumala ang kanilang sitwasyon. But you'll have to remember our earlier point wherein we said that the CTPL was not created with the driver in mind. It was created with the public. in mind. So therefore, the CTPL, the purpose of CTPL is to protect the public. Para po may benepisyong natatanggap po ang public when something like this happens, despite the driver being drunk. Now, it's very, very important to note though that this is the only case wherein drunk driving is covered. Under CTPL lang po, and that means bodily injuries to third parties. Kindly take note of that. If it's property damage that's involved, pagmamayari po ng ibang tao, that could be another person's car, another person's house, another person's dog, another person's property, then CTPL is no longer liable. And the comprehensive policy, if you have any comprehensive coverage on you that has third-party property damage coverage, will also not be paid for if drunk driving po ang nangyari. So it's very, very interesting. Kapag drunk driving po, CTPL, third-party bodily injury, yun lang po ang mako-cover. But for anything else, labas na po yun sa usapan. It's very interesting, and you have to be very, very careful about that. And with that being said, I think number 10 suddenly becomes very, very clear. Point number 10 suddenly becomes very, very clear. But I would like to emphasize that as well. Point number 10 dictates that CTPL, although it is the cheapest type of coverage that you can get, it may not be the most practical type of coverage you can get. Medical bills could go way beyond 100,000. And take note, you are not privy to the whole 100,000 kasi po it's subject to a Schedule of Indemnities. Ano po? So you could end up with bills way beyond 100,000, and when the CTPL has already been exhausted to the full extent of the Schedule of Indemnities, any other remaining balances would have to be shouldered by the customer themselves, the assured po mismo, unless they have comprehensive policies which provide benefits that go beyond the coverage of CTPL, beyond the limits of CTPL, beyond the Schedule of Indemnities of CTPL, which is why it's always a very good idea to get comprehensive coverage. Now, with this list completing upon itself, let me introduce myself again. My name is Miguel. If you're interested in buying insurance from a well-informed agent, kindly send me a DM. Usap po tayo. I can help you get the best deal and the most adequate protection for your vehicle. You want to sell insurance? You can talk to me as well. I'll be showing you a good way to earn money while selling insurance at the same time. Once again, this is Miguel. Thank you so much for watching Tito Talks ng Life Insurance. Magandang araw po.